This barn is over 100 years old, and when we started in 2021, it was on the brink of collapse. Decades of debris, rotting timbers, and even a tree growing inside had to go. Over 5 years, we have been digging, hauling, and fighting to bring it back to life. Today, we are cleaning out more than 50 years of decay to prepare these walls for a traditional oak peg timber frame. But first, this is how we ended up in this situation. In 2015, my wife Marianne and I sold our city apartment and bought an old abandoned farm on the west coast of Norway. We wanted a quieter, more grounded life. The farm hadn't been run since the 1950s, and every building was in rough shape, but none worse than the barn. It had once been a beautiful stone and timber structure with a slate roof, but after decades without repairs, the roof caved in. The previous owners were worried that this would become a dangerous playground for kids, so with the help of the fire department, they burned what was left to the ground. We first started restoration work in the fall of 2021. Honestly, we had no clear plan. I just wanted to clear the rubble and stop the walls from falling apart. The barn was full of hidden treasures, like this chamber pot with a hole in it. Who wouldn't want that? But without a proper plan, it was too easy to let other tasks take priority, so the work stopped and we didn't touch the barn again until spring 2023. So this massive stone structure behind me is what's left of our barn, and it is under attack. And if we are going to rebuild this barn someday, we need to save this. So this is the attacker. Trees. It's growing a lot of trees in this building. And so what's happening is the tree roots find their way in between the rocks, and when the tree expands, so do the roots. And they slowly push the stone blocks apart until the wall crumbles down. I can cut down this tree now, but it will just spring right back up. And since I can't get any of the tractors in there, I need to cut down these beams into a bit more manageable sizes. So I've also been finding a lot of these stone slates, and that's because the roof were a stone tile roof. Many of these that I've been finding is actually still whole, and that's kind of amazing, as they were all lying on the roof when it collapsed. One of the big challenges was this beam. It was built into the wall, it was heavy and unstable. It worried me. If this came down on its own, it could pull parts of the wall with it. Falling on your face while holding a running chainsaw is not without its risk, but I would have been a lot more careful if I'd known what was under the debris I was walking on. Let's just say we were lucky, as you will see later in the video. After the tree was gone and the worst danger to the walls were removed, we didn't do anything more until September. That's when we decided to tackle the debris more seriously. The progress was slow. The tree roots had knitted the soil together and it was difficult to work with. I eventually lost motivation and once again the project went on hold. Fast forward to July 2024. By chance I saw an ad for a company that built traditional timber frames. They came, inspected the ruins and they told us that the walls were in surprisingly good shape. They even gave us an offer and we accepted. Before the new frame could go up, The walls needed serious prep work. Finally, we had a clear goal and that gave us motivation. We started by clearing out all the debris and exposing the original concrete floor. This section once housed cows. The remains of the stalls were still visible. Now and then we stumbled on old equipment. If you recognize what this is, let us know in the comments. Not everything was worth keeping though, like this pile of vinyl. It crumbled to dust when we touched it. The massive root from the tree we cut on earlier also had to go. It put up a fight but eventually gave up. And then we found something. Actually, my son found it. While using my pruning shears to cut glass, which explains why they are so dull now, he discovered a hidden compartment under the floor. I had been stumbling back and forward over this opening several times, and were lucky I hadn't fallen in. After finishing one side, we moved to the other. This side was less fun. It was full of stinging nettles. We also uncovered another piece of machinery. Any guess? Drop them in the comments. Unlike the first side, this part had no concrete floor, which made the digging much harder. Then came the old water line. I got a huge surprise when I cut it off. It was still connected to the wall. The barn had been burnt down, and yet the water was never shut off. We were lucky it hadn't melted. Still, it meant we had water already hooked up, which was great news, but it also meant I had to hurry to the hardware store to stop our well from running dry. Piece by piece, all the debris was finally gone, a milestone I had dreamed about for years, but the walls was still not ready for the frame. The next step was cleaning off decades of moss and dirt. With all the water in the building, we discovered that there was a hole at the end of the manure chute where the water drained into the secret room under the floor. From there, it was a pipe that led out to the manure basement. With the walls cleared, the demolition phase was over. The rebuilding phase had begun. Before the timber frame could go up, we needed to prepare the tops of the wall. Fall was approaching fast, so we also bought a tent to keep our tools dry. Using a laser leveler, we cut all the pillars to the same height. Then we built forms to pour a concrete cap. That way the timber frame could have a level foundation. And then disaster struck. A heavy rainstorm collapsed our brand new tent. Luckily only one pole snapped, so with a bit of modification we were back in business. To save concrete, we fill parts of the form with stones. Since the forms weren't watertight, I added construction foam to keep the concrete from just running down the walls. I also drilled in bolts to anchor the rebar mesh to the stones below. The first batch of concrete was a bit dry. Lesson learned. The corner wall had suffered more damage than the rest, so we had to rebuild it before we could pour. At first, I tried saving money by hauling concrete bags in our old station wagon. With only a few hundred kilos of payload, that meant getting a few bags per trip. Not exactly efficient. Eventually, I gave up and ordered 2 pallets. Sometimes the cheap way just costs more. Up to this point all the work had been permit free, but to raise the timber frame we would need an approved building permit, so I finished the drawing and sent in the application. I had saved building the last form until the rest of the cap had been cast, so I could use the form to adjust the cap. Measuring corner to corner, I could square it against the old stone walls, which being over 100 years old weren't exactly millimeter perfect. Some stones at the back needed adjustment, but they were massive. The only option was to break them apart. Then came the first frost night. This was bad news. If concrete freezes before curing, it crumbles. We had no time to lose. We cleared out the loose soil from under the stones so the cap would bind properly. Meanwhile, one of our sheep broke into the chicken house and started eating their feed. Let's just say she wasn't in a hurry to leave. That night I saw something fantastic on the night sky. This was the strongest northern lights I had ever seen. Despite ordering extra, we still ran low on concrete. I wanted the cap to be poured in one go, with no weak joints, so we bought more. And then we bought more again. Surely it was enough this time. Then the forms failed. They were too weak and the whole thing nearly collapsed. I forced them back together and added support. But once again we ran out of concrete. We would have a weak spot in the cap. Then disaster struck again. A big storm in the night had completely ravaged our tool tent. It was no saving it this time, as every pole was bent or broken. The storm had also scattered empty concrete bags all over the farm. We were still racing against time, so we just had to press on to get the last section casted. As we neared the finish line, it was difficult not to notice that we were once again running out of concrete. Was it possible that I hadn't bought enough this time either? This would be close. Tipping over the bucket did also not help. One bag left. I could not believe it. If I only had one more bag, we would have made it, but we did not have enough this time either. In the end, I was throwing in all the rocks I could find just to fill up the last form. The corners were missing and that was annoying, but not critical. At this time, I was starting to regret using the construction foam, as removing it was a huge job, but I don't know if there would have been another way. The barn walls are cleared, repaired and topped with a new concrete cap. Next, we will start raising the timber frame. This was part 1 of our Rebuilding the Barn series. If you want to see the timber frame going up or follow along with other farm projects, subscribe to our channel. A huge thanks to our fantastic patrons that make videos like this possible. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much for watching.